everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. I'm Alex Fiallo, co-curator of Michael Richards' Are You Down? I'm zooming today from the land of Mohegan, Mashantucket Pequot, Eastern Pequot, Shattuck, Golden Hill Pagosset, Neantic, the Quinnipiac, and other Algonquin-speaking people, also known as New Haven, Connecticut. Today, August 2nd, 2021, Michael Richards would be turning 58 years old. We honor Michael's birthday with this special film screening and conversation. We want to thank Dennis Scholl and Juan Matos for directing the powerful documentary we just watched together. I'm having some very big feelings about watching that again for the first time in a little while. We also want to thank everyone interviewed in the documentary whose insights into Michael's art, life, and legacy have been invaluable. This work-in-progress version of the film is currently on view at MOCA North Miami as part of the first museum retrospective of Michael Richards' art, Are You Down? And we're excited for the documentary to be shown widely in the future.
And I am Melissa Levin, co-curator of Michael Richards' Are You Down? I'm zooming in today from the land of the Seminole and Calusa people, also known as Sarasota, Florida. We are also immensely grateful to Shauna Sheldon, the MOCA team, and the MOCA board for believing in Michael Richards' artistic vision and our vision to curate Richards' first museum retrospective. We additionally want to extend immense gratitude to Don Dale, Michael Richards' cousin and the steward of his estate, for caring for his work for over the past nearly 20 years and for being our central collaborator over the past 5 years. Our conversation tonight includes the filmmakers Dennis Scholl and Juan Matos, artist and friend of Michael's Luis Gispert, who you also just heard from in the documentary, and is moderated by curator and producer Donnamarie Baptiste. Their dialogue will highlight Michael Richards' powerful artistic practice and his enduring influence on cultural communities in New York City, Miami, and beyond. A note that we are very happy to take questions. If you have questions, please put them in the chat and Amanda will share them with Donnamarie towards the end of the event. We want to give tremendous thanks to this panel. They all have illustrious and impressive careers, and we will introduce everyone with brief biographies that highlight just a few of their wide-ranging accomplishments and perspectives.
Juan Luis Matos is a multidisciplinary artist and filmmaker born in Havana, Cuba, and based in Miami, Florida. He studied at the HFBK in Hamburg, Germany, and received his BFA from the San Francisco Art Institute. He's the digital content producer and coordinator at Ulite Arts, a 2020 Suncoast Regional Emmy Award winner, and currently an artist in residence at the Bakehouse Art Complex in Miami, Florida. Dennis Scholl is the president and CEO of Ulite Arts, a 35-year-old organization dedicated to supporting visual arts artists in Miami. Over the last 20 years, Scholl created a series of initiatives dedicated to building the contemporary art collections of major museums, which resulted in hundreds of patron-funded art acquisitions. Additionally, he is a 14-time regional Emmy winner for his work in cultural documentaries, including films about Tracy Emin, the Astor Gates, Frank Ayers, and now Michael Richards.
Luis Gispert is a Cuban-American artist who makes sculpture, photographs, and video work that comments on cultural aesthetic tastes. He received a BFA in film from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and an MFA in sculpture from Yale University. His work is included in public collections, including the Perez Art Museum in Miami, the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, the Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum, and the Whitney Museum of American Art. And tonight's moderator is Donnamarie Baptiste. Donnamarie Baptiste is a producer, programmer, and curator of art and culture. Born in Trinidad and Tobago to musician parents, she has spent most of her life between Florida, New York City, and the US Virgin Islands. After studying the humanities in the Caribbean, she moved to Miami and subsequently to New York City. Currently, she is based in Miami, providing arts and culture management consulting to creative, national, and international clients while supporting the local art community as a board member of Ulite Arts. And we will now hand it over to Donnamarie and our esteemed panelists.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Melissa. I'm so excited to be here and to talk with Dennis and Luis and Juan about this amazing film and about the life of the incredibly talented Michael Richards. So for those of you, I'm assuming that everyone that has watched the film, but for those of you that didn't see the film, it's definitely a must. And I just wanted to ask quickly to Juan and Dennis, was this film created for the exhibition, or is it part of a larger full-length feature project? Or what can we expect? Because the film definitely left me wanting more. I've seen it about 4 times. I went to the exhibition. I watched it a couple times there, and I've watched it again a few times since then. So I just wanted to get your thoughts, just so that the audience knows, can we expect more, or was this created specifically for the exhibition?
Juan, you want to take that one?
Yeah, hi. Hey, Dennis. So I think our next step is we're working on another cut of the film that'll be actually shorter than this. I think the idea is to encapsulate the story in a new, more poetic and tonal way that's a little bit more concise. But yeah, it's been something that has definitely been on Ulay's radar for a long time because of Michael Richards' legacy. And of course, when the Michael Richards Award became a thing with the Ellys. So it's definitely been something we've been thinking about. And this was definitely a great opportunity to kind of mend those two things together.
And I wonder what, Luis, I wonder what your thoughts are about the film, since you knew Michael well, and I just, you participated in the film, and I just wonder, when you watch it again, what are your thoughts about the film, and is there anything that you think that we miss about Michael and about who he was and what his work as an artist meant?
It's funny, this is the second time I see it, and it's hard to do this whole thing with a knot in your throat. And I have to say, it's very brave and difficult what you guys did. I mean, I can't imagine how to tackle the the story, and especially something that I really did like a lot about the film was is when you guys, the focus on Miami, on his time in Miami, which was, and then how it celebrated that, it brought back great memories. But I mean, it just spoke a lot to what was going on in Miami at that time and how Michael was part of that. And we could talk more about that, but that was something that I think was so well done, and so important to balance it out, because the weight of the whole story. And like I said, it was must have been a very difficult thing to do, and you guys pulled it off so well.
And Dennis, I wanted to ask you, doing a film like this is obviously a heavy load, for you and Juan to take on. So how do you think Michael would like to be remembered? And do you think that this film, do you feel that this film captures the essence, or in your next cut, are there other things that we haven't seen or don't know yet?
Well, when we set out to make the film, we made a commitment, particularly to Melissa and to Alex, that it would be an art film, an art filmmaker. I make films about art and artists, and that it wasn't going to be a sensationalized film about Michael's passing. Because if you're not an art person, then the story becomes artist makes it work just before he dies, 9/11, prescience. And that's not really Michael. Michael is a complex, interesting individual. And even though the film is a bit hagiographic, I mean, I'm a fanboy of Michael and his work. I've always been that way. And so what we tried to do is make a film that gave honor to his life, showed the communities that he participated in, about how far ahead he was in terms of the kind of work, the stories he was telling at that time. That's why Dredd is also very important to the film, because Dredd has kind of picked up that mantle and run with it. You know, so our goal was always to try to tell Michael's story in a way that we'd be proud of if he could see the film. And so, you know, that's what we've tried to do. The film is going to go to PBS very soon in this format. We're going to tweak it a little bit. It is a work in progress. And then we're going to do a much shorter cut for the film festival circuit. That's where we're going to go next. So the film was specifically made for the exhibition. And I think the proof is in the fact that everybody that's talking tonight after watching the film has, as Luis said, a little lump in their throat. So, you know, as a filmmaker, you want that from people. You want them to feel what you feel when you're thinking about somebody you're trying to honor with a film.
Yeah, the film is highly emotional. I mean, it's as we all just witnessed. And
a shout out, by the way, with regard to that, to Marlon Johnson, the editor, who's been my longtime collaborative partner, to Ed Talavera, the cinematographer, and to Scott, the sound guy, because there's a lot of rugged video in here from a long time ago. And the three of them really elevate the film from a production value so that you can watch it and feel engaged by it. You know, Wanty and I work really hard on this, but we can't do it without a big, big team. And so we're very appreciative to those guys.
Yeah, the editing and even the music. I was noticing the music. You know, after you watch it a couple times, you start to notice more and more things. And I noticed how great the music was as well. And so, yeah, it's really well done. Luis, I wonder, I know that you talked about it a little bit in the film, but I just wonder if you could just share with us again how you and Michael met, and were you immediately drawn to him, you know, because of your practices? Were you drawn together because of your work, or were you just kind of two people that met and just really got on really well and became friends?
Well, we met at what was a major hub at the time, which was the Arts Center. And as William has explained in the story, shortly around that time is when I met him, because I was sharing a studio with William at that time. And I think, well, William and I and Michael had a lot of interest in common. And so we immediately hit it off. And it was the music, the culture that we were involved in, we were interested in, and like the swing low piece, which is in the show, which we had a part of it was to restore the piece. That piece, seeing that piece inspired me and gave me, he had been tying into car culture through New York, but through the Caribbean connection. And I had been doing that in a vacuum. What had happened was that at that time, to say that the Art Center was a very important, well, at least Miami Beach, because there was the Alliance Film Center across the street. And William and I had just returned from Chicago, and there were a lot of other artists that had returned from undergraduate, and we're all kind of meeting up there. And then there was Michael with New York. And then there were all these parallel things that was in the zeitgeist that we were interested in. And he had shown me some pictures, some slides of the piece of Swing Low when he had shown it in New York at the Studio Museum. And I had been working with similar, things in a vacuum, not knowing what he was doing, and working with Neon. And so immediately we hit it off, and this conversation started from there. And then our general interest in music and Caribbean music and experiencing Miami, and which was a very fruitful time for everybody.
I would like to think that I didn't know Michael personally. I had met him a few times just at Art Center, because, back then Art Center used to be open late. It used to be, the artists would be in there late at night. Artists would be sleeping in there sometimes. And so you could kind of go there. Like if I was going to like 821, which I don't know if you guys remember 821, that bar on Lincoln Road, you'd go there and have a drink, stop by the Art Center and see who was there, who was hanging out. And Michael would be there, and, a bunch of people would be there. So I just kind of knew him through that, kind of through osmosis. But in my head, I think we probably would have been really good friends. So I was wondering about the research that was involved in the film, because we, to Dennis and Juan, you have Luis and you have William, you have Christine, we have all of these people that knew Michael Charo, et cetera, Lazaro. But when when you're tackling the legacy of someone who passed away in such a tragic way, an unexpected way, how do you go about the sensitive research that you need to put together the kind of story that you want to tell?
Yeah, I think that I didn't know that we were necessarily going to make a film until Juan and I had been collaborating over the last couple of years. And I wasn't sure if there was a film there. And then I sat with Juan and I said, I'm kind of thinking about this. We've got this opportunity with the museum. This guy, Michael, is probably one of Ulight's most illustrious, if you will, alumna. So, and then I showed him, a couple of moments, a couple of ideas, and his eyes bugged out. And I said, okay, now I know I got a film. If Juan's excited, I know I've got a film. And then, Juan, why don't you talk a little bit about some of the things we were chasing, pulling, et cetera, and some of the discoveries?
Yeah, it was incredible. I think, the first thing that Dennis was like, look on the internet. And so it was basically just doing a lot of archival digging on the internet. And I found a lot of really interesting footage that primarily came through Alex Harsley. And that was just like these backlogs of videos that are just like kind of randomly on YouTube. And he was just kind of filming moments all that time. And he's been putting it up on YouTube over the past like 8 years or so. A lot of them were like like no descriptions, or like kind of, you just kind of had to look through them, and they're like hundreds of videos. But they're super intimate. It's him and Michael in the studio museum doing these installs, and like all these friends. And so that was a real, like, finding those videos, like, just, it would be like a week or two, and then I'd find a new one, and it's like new content, and it was incredible. And then between that and then all the archival photos that were coming in through friends, and of course Alex and Melissa were a huge assist in that. They gave us a gigantic hard drive filled with photos of his past installations and works like that. So it was shout out to Alex Harsley, because
if the only moving image footage we had of Michael was the very formal kind of art center South Florida piece that he did, you wouldn't really get that warmth that is reflected in the film. I mean, that piece of footage, which we licensed from Alex, thank you to his daughter also, that piece of footage, really, we built the film around it, because that was Michael. That was Michael as the real deal. That was Michael excited about being in a show in the Studio Museum, ambitious about it, but also kind of soft and reserved, and you put all that together and you get a human being, and that's what we were trying to do in the film, is to build, a series of ways of looking at Michael. Luis had his experience where Michael was kind of an important figure to him. He just gotten out of school, come back home, and he looked at Michael this way, and other people looked at Michael this way, and so. That's how you build a documentary film about an individual, where you can't sit that person down and interview them. And I've done that a fair amount. I did it with Andy Sweet, who many of you will remember in The Last Resort. And I'm in the process with Kareem Tabsh in doing it with Bunny Yeager, who just, who passed away a number of years ago. So you got to build from what you can find. And if you can't find enough, honestly, you can't make the film. It's very difficult to make a film without some kind of touchstone. So we were Juan's right. We were very fortunate to find that footage, because it really does turn the film.
Yeah. I see a question here about heroes, Dennis.
Well, the one thing I don't want anybody to lose sight of is that there are really three incredible heroes that allow us to have this moment today. One is Dawn, who saved Michael's work from being destroyed. and let it sit in her garage for 15 years. And then somehow Melissa and Alex go up there and just take a look and decide to take this project on. And I got to tell you, this has been for them a labor of love. There's been virtually nothing economic about this. They have simply done it over and over and fought to have Michael's work recognized for the important work of the era that it is. And so they're really the heroes in this. You know, Juan and I are fortunate to make the film. The folks that knew Michael, we're so excited to have them talk about him. But for them to take that project on, both Dawn and for Melissa and Alex, it's a real contribution to the art world in a way that doesn't happen very often. So I would just want to give them a shout out. You guys watched the film out there and you saw that they just simply decided we got to do this. And boy, I mean, what a result. Oh, it's very exciting.
I agree. I mean, I've Melissa and Alex, I know I've sung their praises, and Dawn as well. I mean, just, it's phenomenal. I mean, it's phenomenal. And for those of you that haven't seen the exhibition, it's worth the trip. So please see it. Hopefully it will travel and you'll see it in your town.
Yeah. And Donnamarie, you know, for Oolite, this all began, as Juan said, I when I joined Oolite, I knew we wanted to do something to get resources back to artists, you know, in the street in Miami. And, but we also wanted to honor, you know, our community is now at a mature point where we can honor a serious artist that's given back over the years every year. And I knew right away that I wanted to call it something about one of our alumni. And boy, when I went to Alex and Melissa and they spoke to Dawn, the ability to call that award the Michael Richards Award is very special to us and very special to Oolite. And it's one of the reasons we're so involved in this process because, you know, that explains, it gives testament to the kinds of artists that are winning this award. So we really feel privileged about that.
Absolutely. Hear, hear. And on that note, I wanted to ask Luis as well. What's a really important thing that you learned from Michael? I'm trying to give the audience, for those that don't know, have never, you know, maybe they've not heard of him until now, just give them a little bit more about who he was as an individual, as an artist. What's an important thing that you learned from him that you would love to share?
Well, to give some context, so when I meet Michael, I'm fresh out of undergrad, and so is William. And here we had been in Chicago and came in with our Chicago angle. You know, we had some new information, but then we meet and had some trips to New York. But here was Michael was the first working artist that we met from New York, right? He already had done through the Whitney, and he was older than us. So that was in itself just experiencing to see another artist who I hadn't done a residency yet. William hadn't done a residency yet. I don't think so at that point. And all of the other artists we were, at the time in that moment. And here was an artist who was doing a residency. You know, he's coming in from New York. So the conversation was at a high level, which was what we were looking for. We were hungry. And the interesting about Michael, and Michael, was a serious guy. He was a serious person. He had a very funny, irreverent side, but as you can see in his work, he was a serious person, and took his work ethic also was very serious. And that's something we always all in the group connected to, coming from working class Caribbean families that had similar issues. That the families didn't understand what we were doing, but somehow we were applying. He was applying. There was that work ethic. Show up to the studio every day, early, leave late, go and do your thing, and then come back. So, and it was just such a great. It was a moment that Miami in itself had like the zeitgeist of what was going on. Like DJ Khaled was like on pirate radio at the time, and you had the Española Art Center that was also going on, which Kevin Arrow was a director at the time, and and that was down the street. So Michael and us would go to that. So there was this whole, so he was touching all these people in different ways. And then later when I moved to New York, which was actually that summer of 2001, yeah, I guess that's, yeah.
That's, yeah. So yeah, you're taking me back. I remember when Khaled was on 96 on 96, and at the time I was on a pirate radio station, 96.9 Beach Radio, and Khaled used to come over. And so it's just, yeah, that time was magical in Miami, and the artists, the work that was coming out of Miami at that time was so visceral. It was so, no one was doing it to be famous. They were just doing what they needed to do, what they felt they had to do, or else they couldn't live, and it was just such an honest time. And that's the impression that I get from Michael from watching the film. I think the film really gives you a sense of his work ethic and of how serious he was about his craft. And I love that his cousins, that, Don says that, the family didn't take him, when you come from a Caribbean family, listen, my grandmother used to say, you're either a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, or disappointment to the family. And so
those are the four options.
Yeah, those are the options. So I totally get that. I totally get what Don was saying. And I think the film just really beautifully touched on all of these issues about identity and craftsmanship in a way that can inspire younger artists and inspire generations of artists. And so that's why I wanted to ask more about Michael's personality, so that people can see that, this is just a regular working class, young man who was making this work that has now we look back and we see how prolific it is. And I think the film does a great job of capturing how truly special this artist was. Dennis, I'd love to get your thoughts about the work of Michael Richards. You said that you were so moved by it and how much you loved that work. What do you think made him so special? Like, what is that thing as the executive director of Light, as a collector of art, as someone who knows his way around the art world? What do you think? How do you find that special thing? What made Michael so special?
Well, I think that for me, the seriousness of the questions that he was asking us to confront, that wasn't going on as much then as it is now, as we go through this great national, paying attention really, and beginning to think in a different way. I mean, it is a little frightening to think about how far ahead he was in asking these very difficult questions and asking them in a very confrontational way. The piece he did in the window of the Gray Art Gallery with the bodies hanging behind the curtain and allowing you to figure out what was going on. I mean, that's some serious confrontational work. And it's making you consider the issues, and it's making you not be able to turn away. I think that is something that maybe we've gotten a little more comfortable with over the last few years as we've had this incredible movement toward art from the African-American community. But back then, I mean, yeah, the work is being made, but Michael was elevating it to a level and forcing you to confront it. And, artists try to do that sometimes and they don't succeed really. And in these works, he really did succeed in requiring you to pay attention. And that doesn't happen very often. Luis, I'm wondering, when I think about Swing Low, and then I think about your video of the car alarm and the Chungo Girl cheerleaders, which I think is one of the great art videos of that decade. Did you get something from Michael when you made that video? Did you take anything away from, or was it simply the idea of using, car culture and things like that? Because it's literally one of my favorite videos that was made in that decade. And you know, and so I'm wondering if like Swing Low, you know, moved you in any way toward that.
No, there is a connection there, and that's, you're very astute, Dennis. I think you're the first person to make that connection. And so I see Swing Low when Michael is in Miami, and in '99, I made a sculpture that was a soapbox racer that had neon lights on it, you know, car racing seat speakers and a built-in car alarm. And that came from being influenced and by having conversation, because at that point I'd known him for probably a year or two, and having that conversation about the culture. So that, through him, I arrived at that sculpture, and the car alarm, an actual interactive car alarm with a remote control happens. And then that leads me to the video and the dancing. So yeah, so Michael was there for sure.
If to the audience, if you haven't seen this video, find a way to see it. It is one of the all-time great. It's just so Miami, and it's so car culture, and it's, you know, I mean, it's just a really spectacular video. And art video is hard because you don't always, you know, get your message across quickly. And this one, it's just one of the, honestly, Louis, I mean, it's one of the great videos of that decade. So you should be very proud of that one.
Some people find it obnoxious, but yeah.
That whole series.
As long as you get a reaction, baby, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
That whole series, Louis, was just that all of that work with cars, just phenomenal.
But it's funny to go back to Michael and what Dennis was talking about and the work, but you know, the poetry in his work, and because he's dealing with, and I think going back in time when he was doing that, which was one of the things of having a conversation, you know, having dialogue with Michael, because he was coming from New York. So, you know, he's a Black artist, you know, what it was to understand, we're in Miami, we had just come back to Chicago, but understand the bigger picture of what was going on, because there was a very small audience and outlets for that kind of work at that time. And, you know, so the glass ceiling was there, and, you know, and he was kind of, you know, because William and I and other artists, you know, had our sights on New York or moving, you know, somewhere else. And he was, you know, kind of giving us like a roadmap, like this is what's going on. This is what's, you know, what's coming, you know, this is how the art world is operating right now. And, you know, and so, and again, yeah, he was way ahead. And, you know, so he was very generous in that way of giving us a clear perspective of what was going on when you were a non-white artist jumping into the fray.
It sounds like he made you braver, which I like to hear.
Yeah, sure.
And Louis, what do you think? Michael? Where do you think he would have? I'm just kind of curious as to what his trajectory may have been were he still with us. You know, would he have stayed in New York? Would he, you know, had he talked about going anywhere else, or did he share any of his dreams of what he wanted for his career or what his work? I wonder, you know, what was going on in his head, or was he just in the moment, constantly kind of in the moment making the work?
I mean, it's hard to say, and we'll, you know, to speculate, but I mean, Michael was ambitious, so Michael wanted his work to be seen. He was looking for an artist. He wanted to be validated, as all Black and artists of color at the time were, wanting to be validated and wanting to, you know, enter into a broader, you know, discussion, which happened. I mean, who knows where he'd be now? I mean, the work would be, you can only imagine that it would be represented in the highest, you know, yeah. And he was in the moment, as all artists are, but I think he was always looking to, I mean, New York was home for him, and I could imagine he would still be in New York, but.
Yeah, it's, you know, you can only imagine where he would be now. I mean, I see him with, you know, Glenn Ligon and, you know, his contemporaries, you know, I can totally see him there, you know. That's
the level I think too, Donnamarie. I think that's where he'd be sitting now, is kind of like a Glenn Ligon peer. I think that's a really good analysis of where he might be. You obviously got to keep the work up, and you got to keep the consistency up, but there's a lot of work that came out of that time period.
He was working at that level there. Yeah.
And when you see the drawings and the sculpture that Don, that was in Don's garage, and you think this is what he was doing then, and the work is so good. When you see in the film when I don't know who it was that was flipping through the work, some drawings. It might have been Dawn, who was Dawn was just showing, she was kind of going through and showing people, and you're just like, wow, like amazing. And then at the exhibition, when you see the work about the Tuskegee Airmen or the drawings, the plane drawings, it's all just so good and so surreal when you think about, that fateful day. It's just, it's hard to even fathom in a sense, someone that young and talented, leaving this world the way he did, but also leaving behind this immense body of work at such a young age.
Yeah. One of the things that we're doing right now that Juan touched upon is that we're doing a shorter version. I'm wondering, Juan, you're leading this. What elements of the story are you going to shift and, in your mind right now? Where are you going to go with it? I'm anxious because my name's going to be on it too, so I'd like to know. So.
That's a really good question. I feel like I really want to think about ways that we can contextualize or recontextualize the conversation that was happening with the kind of work that's happening now within our contemporary art movements. But yeah, I think it's a lot of like reframing, because this is a very didactic, this is very much like, this is Michael and this is his work and this is who he was. But to create something more that kind of is, the essence of him instead of telling us, it's going to be a new challenge. And I'm not exactly sure where it's going to go, but I'm curious too.
And Juan, do you think, what determines that? Is it the content that you find? Is it, the content that you find that determines the direction? Or do you have it in your head already, kind of what you see this shorter version being? I'm just curious what's going on up there.
I think it's the intention.
Yeah.
The intention of what we want to say with it. And so this was very much like, this is a great opportunity to share his work in conversation with the exhibition at MOCA. But now that it's going to live outside of that context, there'll be a different intention for that work.
We'd love to have incredibly great hip hop music throughout the short version, but music rights are ridiculous. So it's really difficult to access we'd love to have 3 great songs that represent that era, but they're untouchable in terms of, in terms of cost. So we got to find a way to work around that.
Yeah, or if anybody has some dance hall connects, let us know.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I might have a few for you. I might have some.
Walshy, are you out there, buddy? Can you hear us?
Walshy, yeah, there you go. I might be able to reach out to Luis. We know some people. We must know some people that can help them out. We'll think about it.
Let me give you some time to work. Yeah, let me think about something.
Yeah.
Something I just wanted to it made me think about what Dennis was answering to Donnamarie's question, was that like Michael was essentially, he was a conceptual artist, first, because I think for him, because coming out of Whitney, and he had the idea, but he was a consummate craftsman, right? He was an incredible draftsman, and he would fabricate and make all of that by hand. Like, he knew the process, so he was just as much as a process artist as he was a conceptual artist, which is a rare combination. I mean, you rarely find that at that level of proficiency. So I would say
the level of craft is extraordinary. The create. You really don't. But most of the time, artists are really good thinkers, or they're really good makers.
That's right. Yeah,
I agree, and maybe that's why I've not been such a huge fan of some conceptual work, because it just wasn't executed, I guess, in a way that I understood. Not saying that wasn't good. It's just I didn't understand it. But with Michael's work, that's the thing that I noticed so much about the exhibition was I spent quite a bit of time there, and it was just how well everything is made. Like everything is crafted so beautifully and perfectly, like just amazing. He was phenomenal in all of those ways that you just mentioned. I'm getting a little note about questions. Amanda, do we have questions? Should we open up to questions?
We sure do. So I'm going to start from some of the first questions that were asked to our chat. First, from Donna Ruff, they asked, I wonder if you spoke to anyone from the LMCC about the residency at the Towers, because if I recall, there was a kind of interesting story about why there was an artist residency there.
We didn't follow up on that in any detail. We knew that the residency came through the LMCC, and of course, Melissa's got a long history there. But we didn't really explore that in any greater depth than that. I think that the guy in the films, he says, "You got a residency in an office building? Like, what the hell, dude?" And of course, Mike says, "Hey, man, it's free." And so to us, I never thought it made sense to have a then you go up to the top of the World Trade Center at that time and you look out and you go, well, that's pretty inspiring. You could understand why somebody might want to have that opportunity. So, but we never really did dig in on that for sure.
Okay. Then we have a question from Isabella Marie Garcia. They asked, alongside the documentary, the experience of walking through the exhibition is one that hits multiple emotional nerves. For each of you, is there a particular work in the show that resonates deeply?
Wow. Who wants to take that one? Who wants to start?
You, Donnamarie, what about you?
Well, there were two works, honestly. Obviously, the Tar Baby work is for so many reasons, particularly if you come from the African diaspora, you can understand that work in America, what that work signifies and what it means. But the other work obviously was Swing Low in the installation room, just because, I'm a Caribbean gal and I just, I loved it. I spent so much time in there, and it just hit on it would just hit on all of the music that when I was a kid, all of that dancehall and reggae that we listened to. So, for me, it was a personal emotional moment, but walking through the exhibition, the Tuskegee work and the Tar Baby work was really emotional for me. And also because of how he passed away, and the analogy with the planes and everything just really I kept thinking about the film, because you put the film first, Dennis. You guys had the film as soon as you walk in. So I watched the film twice, and then I went and saw the show, and then I was super emotional throughout the whole exhibition.
Well, that's what you pay us for. So I want to say that the work that I find the most moving is a work that didn't make the film yet, and we may find a way to have it make it. And there's only a picture or two of the work in the exhibition. It's got a long title, but so we do this film and we try to stay away from the idea that, oh my God, Michael made this Tar Baby versus Saint Sebastian with planes crashing into it, and then he passes the way he passes. That's extraordinary. Except the very last film, the very last piece that he made, which didn't survive. We believe it was in the, and it's a picture. It's a sculpture of Michael sitting on a comet, riding to the sky with his mouth like wide open and just kind of away I go. And I don't think Luis knew about this, and we showed it to him. We showed him images of it. He knew about Tar Baby and all that. And I remember that was one of the most emotional interviews we did. You couldn't believe that after Tar Baby, there was this next piece of somebody riding a comet off into the stratosphere. So for me, we got to find a way to use that image in the short segment somehow, because it's almost too much, really. The Tar Baby thing is too much as it is. But it's almost too much to kind of accept and to deal with. So
Yeah.
for me, that was a big one. Wansi, what about you? What do you think?
Just
I
to
was
mention,
floored. Yeah.
no,
I'm
just,
sorry. I'm sorry.
there's a quick shot in the film where it shows his the studio that he's working in, and you could see the silhouette of the piece, and that's when we first recognized that there was like something else going on there. And then I think there's a few other models of that same piece in other installations, but it's incredible. Luis, you wanted to mention something?
No, yeah, I remember I was floored when Dennis showed me that piece. I just was a loss of words, and I still to this, it just, it didn't compute. It's still hard to process.
I think the reaction shot we use in the film of you when we have the voiceover is after I take the iPad away from you, you are looking off into space watching the comet go away. I mean, it's really intense.
Yeah.
Something I really loved about the exhibition, I mean, definitely the swing low piece is something that is just an incredible work. But what I love about the exhibition and seeing all the works in those states is that you kind of see like the in-between pieces or like the fragments of like what was kind of lost in throughout the process or the years that have passed by. There's one piece there that's it's on the mirror box with the Tuskegee Airmen feet. And there's like a little view hole that you're supposed to look through, and there was supposed to be something there, but it's lost. And there's another piece that references one of his video works, which is also lost. So I think it's like a still from it, or like it's like in a photograph somewhere. But yeah, it's a really, I mean, that exhibition it's props to Melissa and Alex and everybody behind that.
Absolutely. Oh, and also you just reminded me, Juan, of all of the work, the image, the pictures that were loaned by his friends, and all of those that little memorabilia was a really, really nice special touch. Just you could just get lost in all of that for hours. It's just really well done. It's a great exhibition in case you guys haven't noticed that we love it. Is there another question?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually have two from George Fishman. They asked, what was the exhibit that Gennaro Ambrosino hosted? At least one work at MOCA was shown there, correct? And I believe that they're talking about the Escape Plan series. And then they also asked Juan and Dennis, would you please speak a bit about what you did to modulate the tone of the film between celebration and heartbreak? The music is so important.
I want to give a lot of credit to Marlon Johnson for that, who's been, like I said, working with me for, almost 15 years now. Juan and I talked about the music a lot, and I don't think we necessarily agreed on where we wanted to go. And then when we gave it to Marlon, normally he'd come back without music, but he'd put the music in. And the more I listened to it, the more I felt like it was a bittersweet kind of refrain, which I like. And I tend to tell stories that are poignant and languid. And when you make the films for yourself or for something like, a situation like Oolite or for an exhibition, you get the liberty to do that. When you're making it for like a film festival, it's got to be a certain length. Otherwise, it's very hard to get it programmed. When you're making it commercially, you're going to get notes from people who you don't necessarily agree with. So the reason I wind up making so many of these films is because I like a languid pace and I like poignancy in the films. And so we did try to strike that balance. And I think the way we did it was we started out joyful, and then we had this very difficult moment. We then came back and focused on the work itself. And then we were able to circle back at the end to Michael again, kind of embracing the opportunity that he had been given at the Studio Museum. And Juan, why don't you talk a little bit about the music discussions we had, because we kind of struggled with that a little bit.
Yeah, I think again Marlon was a big inspiration, and he brought a lot of that for us. But I think more in terms of the tone of the piece, I think it really had a lot to do with the story arc, as Dennis mentioned, and trying to, again, not focus so much on, the Saint Sebastian and the kind of prophetic or what people would call prophetic nature of the work, but really like sit in on the joy that he brought to people and the care. And then all of that is, of course, listening back now, it's all bittersweet because he's not here anymore. So I think that's the
9/11, what happened at 9/11. I mean, that's just too easy in a way. That's it's a cheap kind of way of discussing Michael's life. And it did happen. And we wanted to acknowledge the people that aren't necessarily in the art world that it happened. And he had this kind of situation where he made work that made you step back and think, but that's not Michael. Michael was all the other things in the film. And we wanted to make sure that we honored him that way. And I hope we did. I mean, you do the best you can. And I hope we did. I hope we struck a balance. I really have felt good about showing the film to people that were either in it or involved in this situation, because, pretty much everybody feels the emotional resonance of the film. And as a filmmaker, man, you're just happy when you can get that done. You're happy when you can move people with the work, and all that goes to Michael, but you still have to put the pieces together in a way that move people. And so that's what we tried to do.
We have one final question from Christian Dunyak that said, the film touches on the process of restoration that helped make the show a reality. Is there more footage/info on the restoration process?
Yeah, there is actually. We spent an afternoon, Ed Talavera and I, an afternoon in upstate New York at the conservator's place where they were working on the Tuskegee Airmen that sit on the ground in the big circles. They were working on the airmen's hats that are made out of hair. So we actually watched them working on a lot of that. We got a lot of that footage. Not as much of it made it into the film as maybe we would have liked. But there is that nice moment where you see the conservator prepping the Tuskegee Airmen piece that has been outdoors for so long. And it was a really interesting afternoon to see all that work up close and disassembled. Like Wansi was saying, there are bits and pieces in some situations where you don't really have the whole thing. And the great thing about what Melissa and Alex have done is they've remained true to the work itself. If you can't present the work the way Michael wanted to present it, doesn't happen, doesn't get presented. There's a bunch of earlier work that isn't really about where Michael's mature work wound up. It's not in there. So it's, we're trying to be true to the legacy, which is really important, even in particular, I guess, with the conservation.
Thank you for including that. I think, Donnamarie, that's all our questions that we have in chat for today.
I have a question for Juan. Juan, I'm just curious, an artist of your generation looking at this work, I'm just curious how do you guys read it? Like, what are just, I guess, your thoughts, from just curious of your, Yeah,
I mean, I think the work feels very appropriate for the kind of conversations that we're having now. I think what really struck me about it was the fact that he was Caribbean and a Caribbean artist working in the 90s. And I feel like, especially being in Miami, it's like, that's the kind of thing that I want to see more of. I want to see more Black Caribbean artists talking about these things. And it was definitely very inspiring work. And I haven't seen a whole lot of, I haven't seen a whole lot of work from Black Caribbean artists in the 90s working in the way that he was particularly. So that was definitely a big inspiration. But like from hearing everybody in the room, I mean, I came to Miami, I think when I was like, 8 years old or something in the early 2000s, and hearing about the kind of state of Miami in the 90s and how people were interacting and moving, I think that was definitely the most inspiring part as a young artist, seeing the way that, South Beach and Lincoln Road and these spaces were centers for artists, and definitely something that I take, out every day when I interact with my community, so thank you for that information in the archive.
It's been great. I don't know how much time we have left, Amanda.
We've got like -1 minute, I think.
Okay. Well, so I won't
roll that back.
On that note, should I ask another question, or do you want to wrap up? Should probably wrap up, I guess.
Yeah, I think that with this, we'll wrap up. I do want to say thank you to all involved. I think as one of the, folks that gets to talk to most of the folks that walk in through the doors and tour the students, I can't underemphasize the importance of this work and the work of continuing Michael's voice. It's so contemporary. There's a lot of opportunities that students don't get to learn about history. And I think that this vehicle is really important for our kids as well. So thank you to our participants and audience. We return on September 14th for a very special program, Conversations at MOCA, Present and Possible, honoring Michael Richards, with Michael Richards' cousin, Don Dale, and Michael Richards' Are You Down co-curators, Alex Fiallo, and Melissa Levin, who will be in dialogue with filmmaker, visual artist, and curator Tiona Nakia McLauden to discuss the ongoing work of stewarding artists' legacies. Michael Richards' Are You Down and collection focus, Our Beginnings, Never Known Ends, curated by Dr. Elizabeth Shannon, are on view until October 10th. Also on view on the MOCA Plaza is We're All in This Together by Nice and Easy, and After the Rain Comes Light, Portraits of Resilience by Morel Doucette and Stéphane Arboit, curated by Amanda Sanfilippo Long, which is on view until September 26th. We also encourage you to visit our website and follow us on social media channels for up-to-date information about MOCA's upcoming exhibitions and events, and also please consider becoming a member. Thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you next time.